Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be discussing details coming out of the opening keynote for the Fan Festival for Final Fantasy XIV in Tokyo. As I am physically here in Tokyo, I don't have my normal streaming setup, so audio is not going to be great for this video, but hopefully it's adequate enough for you guys to get the information. So the opening keynote, a lot of stuff that we expected, a lot of stuff that we had speculation that was going to be present, and I'm going to be providing overall thoughts here and also some in-depth thoughts on certain topics that definitely have people arguing over whether it was the right implementation or the wrong implementation. So I actually am just going to be going through my Twitter feed. I took a ton of pictures while I was there. There is an official press official screenshots for press on the press site for Square Enix, but it's taking a very long time to download them on the hotel internet. So I figure I've got everything I need here on my Twitter. So I'll just like scroll through it and everything as we're going through. For that, apologies for the content on the screenshot. So for the opening keynote, the very first thing we got to see was the completed trailer for Shadowbringers. Soken's theme, of course, in its entirety is just as great as it was when we hadn't heard the whole thing. So just incredible what he can pull out. It's changed, especially the order of things that happens. It starts with the events that are about to take place in 4.56, which is, if you didn't know, coming this Tuesday, March 26th. So we'll get the finale of the pre-Shadowbringers story there. Now, among a bunch of other teasers, we mostly see stuff that is familiar. We get to see, of course, the Thancred scene we had already seen. We get to see slightly extended fighting scenes between the Warrior of Light and the mysterious figure that appears, the one that looks like the Kuribu from the Lost City of Amdapor Hard Mode. You get to see a slightly extended scene with Urianger and Y'shtola, which doesn't really give us that much more information, but you can see that there's almost meteorites falling around where they are in the Raktika Greatwood. There's some question about what those are, if there's some force, if they're a part of the flood of light that is taking over that area that we're going to be talking about here. Or if I've seen some people even suggest that they very much are reminiscent of the primals and the I guess the concentrated ether that poured out from Silvertear Lake. We had heard that there would be some more information about Silvertear Lake and about what the Garleans were really looking for when they went there. So it's definitely within the realm of possibility that there's some relation between the ether that was released from Silvertear Lake and the events that we see in the Raktika Greatwood. Now, one of the main things of the trailer we got to see is this wonderful shot right here. We all immediately knew what that meant. By the way, real quick, who is it who called chakrams as the dancer weapon? I mean, actually, a few of us have, but I've been saying that either two separate chakrams or a full-body chakram, a la Soul Calibur, were my most likely bets to see as a weapon. I didn't ever expect them to be pure melee. Being ranged just made so much more sense for me, especially when we were originally suspecting that it was going to be a healer, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, Dancer was present. More importantly, and I don't see the screenshots showing up here, so maybe I should just scroll through this real quick. An inside look at the Crystal Tower. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the Crystal Tower and the expansion so far, and we're going to be learning a lot about it. A lot of people assume this is G'rahatia. For those who may not remember, he was the Mikote that we actually interacted with as part of the Crystal Tower storyline. In other screenshots, you can get small glimpses of his face, and you can see the very similar tattoos he has under his eyes. So if it's not a first shard version of G'rahatia, it could very potentially be ours. But if you haven't done the Crystal Tower storyline for whatever reason, you're a newer player and you just skipped past it because you were trying to focus on getting the story done, I would highly advise going getting that done, because the Crystal Tower is going to be a very present force here in Shadowbringers. Now, we also got a better look at some of the other cities, and we will talk about these later, but this is actually, it's a fat male Mikote is what it is. It's a lot of rich, fat Mikotes all in this city. This is a city we'll talk about a little bit later. It gets revealed, and we get a few screenshots. We even got a little trailer video for it. It's called Yulmore, and it is the city that Thancred has been under when he's been referencing this town sure has changed. So it's a question of whether or not it's changed because it's supposed to be very similar to one of our main city states, or if it's, he's been there already, and as he's spent some time on the first, presumably, and that it's just something's changed. I don't know what the other way to put it. Yoshida himself walked on stage looking as tired as ever. This man works so much that I can't really fault him for looking that tired. But anyway, the first thing we go to confirm is that people have suspected this. I have been kind of on the fence about it because it just... I wasn't so much that I didn't believe we were going here, but it was... There were so many options that I guess I couldn't say yes for sure, I think it'll be this. But we are indeed going to the first shard. Now, for those who are unfamiliar, the shard that we currently exist on is called the Source. And there are 13 other shards, all very similar to ours, but having their own... their worlds have developed independently of ours. So while there may be similarities, they aren't one-for-one replications based on events that have actually taken place. Now, some of the shards were swallowed by darkness. The 13th shard, which became the World of Darkness, the raid that you know from the Crystal Tower series, that one is one of them. There's another one that was swallowed by darkness. And the first we learned in patch 3.4 was a shard that was currently being engulfed by the light. Minfilia went there as the voice of Hydaelyn, or the voice of the mother, and was supposed to try and, stop the Flood of Light from happening. Ardbert and the other Warriors of Darkness gave up their bodies to come to the Source to try and find a solution, and presumably gave up their entire lives. They were told they would basically die if they tried to go back, because of the sacrifice in terms of body that needed to be made to actually travel between the various shards. How we're going to get there in one piece? Probably this portal that we've been seeing in the trailers for patch 4.5, as well as now here in the official reveal of the first. But that's where we're going to be going. And the official name of their realm is Norvrant. Norvrant is just... That's it. That's where we're actually going in the expansion. We're not going to Elsebard. We're not going to Ivalice. We are going to Norvrant. And then on top of that, it says that our goal is to restore darkness to that realm to stop a flood of light. That is the reason for us becoming a warrior of darkness, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. We do also get to see another new town called the Crystarium. Now, the Crystarium is very clearly a reference to the tech demo that happened to Final Fantasy XIV back in 2005. Yeah, going way, way back. And it appears to be a city that just exists just outside the Crystal Tower in the first shard. Now, from what we know of the Crystal Tower in our shard, we thought it was an Allegan tower built as a research facility / communication means, or means of drawing power from Dalamud. Amon worked there with Xande. Xande created his pact with the Cloud of Darkness there. And so we thought we knew what we needed to know about it. But there was always some mystery, because after the Crystal Tower storyline ends, we had Nero Tolskeva throw a scanner to the bottom, and it detected something. We always thought that was the original intended means for Eureka, and it's not that it can't still mean something along those lines. But it's more likely that it detected this kind of power. And considering Nero's vast interest in various sources of power, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to not really tag along for this, but to learn more about it from the sources side of things. And it's a beautiful looking town. I've never really been disappointed in the towns before. Closest thing is Hrothgar's, because it's just, it's run down even to this point, but Crystarium looks wonderful, and the music that plays during that is wonderful as well. The other town, as I mentioned, is Yulmore, and they show us a bit. They show us the Aetheryte Plaza, and they show us some of the slums. So beneath are where the poor people live, and the rich people all live in the main city proper. Very similar to how you may expect things of Ishgard, for example, but to a much greater degree. I mean, it's not just that. It's not like Ishgard where, the commonplace has been destroyed and it can't be rebuilt because of the war. But this is just, these people just look like they survive. And that's it. Because these things are all very clearly hand-built by, not exactly professionals with spare materials that are around. And they're surviving off the bare minimum. Meanwhile, at the top of Yulmore, we saw it earlier with the very plump male Makotes, and that of, there's just a major difference in the class of people that are present here. And I'm curious to see how a place like this kind of survives in terms of that flood of light. Is it one of the final kind of places people can safely be? Because you can see in the sky, even here, that the flood of light is still a constant threat. We see in the trailer that the flood of light is a constant threat, as fighting off light scent, or as we'll soon to be calling them, sin eaters. Thancred's fighting them in the underbelly of the city, so It's probably just barely surviving in the first, but really curious to learn more about that. Now, surrounding the Crystarium is Lakeland, which we had actually seen the concept for at a previous FanFest, but you can see the crystal towers in the picture. Again, sorry for the quality, especially the light because this is a video playing and I'm taking pictures of it. It just leaves this like really like bad feedback on the thing, so you get kind of a rough idea of it. But it reminds me of kind of a more lively version of the peaks in a sense. You know, a lot of mountainous area, just the way things are built, the way things are laid out. But it looks fantastic. It looks a lot more interesting than the peaks, especially with the constant backdrop of the Crystal Tower and the impending doom of, because you know all of that light that's coming down from the sky is the end of the world approaching, pretty much. So having this constant reminder of why we're in the first in zones like this is actually a very welcome thing. I feel like we never really felt the gravity of the situation in Stormblood. They kind of segregated it from, I guess, the rest. You could go to a zone and go to an area that was contested in a sense with the Garleans, but you never really felt the gravity of the situation, whereas this has, you know, a constant reminder, not unlike Dalamud and the end of 3.5 with the ball in the sky that appeared there. So I'm really digging that. That's the big thing I'm really enjoying about the new zones that they showed. They spent a little bit of time to talk about some stuff that we already knew about. They showed us some new screenshots of the challenging new dungeons. As a reminder, challenging does not mean they are making dungeons more difficult. It is a PR word that they've used in the various other fan festivals, just to let you know that just pretend the word doesn't exist. New dungeons. And the dungeons look great. They're all like open. They're very different from the dungeons we've had so far. This kind of gives me Lost City vibes, but then at the same time I can see like other areas, just like a destroyed village. You have this wonderful area, which probably is in Pixie Land, but it's just this, I mean, it's not really wide open. You can very clearly see the ways that the players would traverse it, but it's just such an extravagant landscape to have a dungeon in. Then you have some of the more closed-in stuff, which of course is always going to happen. But again, these are just 3 screenshots of the dungeons. It's worth remembering we are getting 9 dungeons in the expansion instead of 8. What that normally we get 8 in a new expansion. We get 1 at like, for example, 51, 53, 55, 57, 59. Same with 60 to 69 right there. Nice. And then we usually get 3 max level dungeons. You know, we had Aetherochemical and Neverreap and Fractal, and then in Stormblood we had Alamigo, as well as, oh man, it's been a while since Temple of the Fist, and it's been a while since the other one. I don't remember. I'm sorry, I just don't remember. We basically get 3 max level dungeons, and the fact that we're getting a 9th, I was wondering if it was going to be like an introductory dungeon to introduce trusts to players, or if it was going to be, I was wondering if there was going to be maybe an 8-player dungeon that replaces what is our usual trial, like, you know, our Shinryu and our Ultima Weapon and etc. etc. And so I was still really curious how that's going to work out. So let me know what you think about that in the comment section. They refreshed us that trusts are going to be available. Minfilia is in this screen, so she's a trust. Now in Record Keeper, she's a paladin. That's not going to happen here. So I'm wondering if she's just a white mage, and I don't know that I trust her. We'll find out. We'll find out. So I have trust issues with healers in the Duty Finder in general, and an NPC is definitely going to be on my watch list there. We also have the restoration of the Holy See of Ishgard. As a reminder, this will not be one release of content, and will be a steady release of end-game content for Disciples of Hand and Land, and I'm really looking forward to that. Reminder of the 24-man raid being Yorha Dark Apocalypse, themed after, you know, Nier Automata. But then they went into new stuff. The first most obvious one they went into, Dancer. It is the new job that is coming in alongside Gunbreaker in 5.0, and it is a ranged physical DPS that focuses on throwing weapons. Most people had predicted it to be a healer. If you weren't predicting it to be a healer because of certain aspects of the job in Final Fantasy XI, then you were predicting it just because there hasn't been a new healer since Heavensward released. And now that we know this is a physical range, there's only 2 possibilities. the low probability, and then I mean like sub 1%. And this, listen, I've been wrong with these percentages so far. I've said a few things that I said I was 100% sure on that have now been confirmed as not happening. So just take this as hyperbole, but lower than 1% chance of them announcing another job down the line, whether it be tomorrow's live letter or a live letter down the road. Almost no possibility of that happening. The other side of it is it just means you wait a minimum of 2 more years for a healer, because this will make a minimum of 6 years between healers being released. Looking at World of Warcraft, which is the example I would draw, it's kind of hard to judge, because when I look at World of Warcraft, they did not release a new healer in Burning Crusade, in Wrath, in Cataclysm. It wasn't until Pandaria where they released a new healer. So it's about 4 expansions. But it's also hard to judge because the way World of Warcraft did it was, Paladin and Shaman were initially exclusive to each side, Alliance and Horde. And then they allowed them both to play. So you could argue that each side got a new healer when they got Resto Shaman and Holy Paladin. And then with Cataclysm, more races were able to. So it's a question mark of, is it really an acceptable thing to do? I'm not so bothered because obviously I'm not a healer main. So it's hard for me to, be upset about it myself. But I totally feel for the people who have been playing Astro, White Mage, and Scholar. Any of them, or maybe all 3 of them, and now you're still going to be playing those 3. I'm now more curious about healer updates than I was prior, because now the healer updates really need to be cool. And that's the easiest way to say it, especially White Mage. They just really need to pull something super solid out of their hat. I'm hoping for some Geomancer-esque skills on White Mage or Astrologian, but there's nothing to indicate that yet. We won't know until May. So until then, we have our 3rd ranged physical DPS, in that of Dancer. I've always said that the Bard gear looks very extravagant and that Dancer would probably enjoy some of this stuff, and they probably will. Their goal is to fight at ranged with throwing weapons. Chakrams may be the example they're using here, but they said that all sorts of designs for throwing weapons may appear. Don't be surprised to see things like shurikens or boomerangs or things like that. They're not locked into just chakrams and only those. It's specifically throwing weapons. And of course they have no base class, and they're going to be level 60 or tentatively level 60. They're going to be level 60. They've never tentative those levels and not just followed through with them. It performs dances to execute abilities as well, and some of those dances will enhance party members. This makes the most sense. A lot of people have suspected Dancer would have some more supportive aspects to it, of course, especially when they were suspecting it might be a healer. But this pretty much puts it in line with Bard and Machinist, because those are physical range DPS, just like Dancer, that are always able to provide some sort of buff or benefit to their allies, or debuffs on the enemies that are also beneficial. So Dancer is going to be in that vein with the other 2 physical range. It makes me very curious about the role actions, how they're going to be handling that, but we also won't know that till May. So we're going to be doing some videos on Dancer to give people a history on the job, why people may have thought it would be a healer for other reasons. We'll check it out in Final Fantasy XI, Final Fantasy Tactics, especially Final Fantasy XI. We'll be doing a video leveling it to 99, showing people the various things that it was capable of, and to give you maybe an idea outside of the weapon choice of what they're capable of. So just to educate players who maybe didn't play 11 or haven't seen it in its newer forms. We then go on to the next thing. One of the new beast tribes. We knew this was coming. This was not a surprise. The dwarves. They're never without their helmets. They're never without their beards, and they are experts in mining and metallurgy. Now, the dwarves being announced wasn't a surprise. I'm glad to see they didn't go with the Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 9 design, where they kind of look more like goblins. They went with the Final Fantasy 4 design. What might be weird to you is that is indeed a dwarf. It is indeed, and they are indeed a beast tribe. Would it be weird to know that there's a Lalafell technically under there? Because I thought that this was a joke, and they were just saying, ha ha ha. But no, the dwarves are Lalafells. So apparently on the first shard, they have all the same races, but they all go under different names. The Hyur are the Humes, the Mikote are the Mistel, the Elezen are the Elves, the Rogadins are the Galgent, the Aura are the Drawn, and the Lalafell are dwarves. Now that raises a bit of a question, because the Warrior of Darkness, the White Mage, Tamimi, Lamimi, not doesn't have a helmet or a beard. So I'm wondering if that was part of their effort. I'm wondering if maybe they gave up their original appearances to come to the source. But we see an echo flashback of them presumably in a battle back on the first. So I wonder if they just forsook it as kind of a means of joining their allies. Sorry, I haven't had enough water to. Let me just wet the whistle real quick. Okay. There's some questions there, is all I'm saying. So there are also translations, or I guess differences between what they call the new races, which I'll talk about in a second. But there are actually apparently houses where the doors are so short, only a lone fellow can get inside. So you add a Fantasia every time you want to go inside a Dwarven house. It doesn't mean there probably won't be any quests in the actual Dwarven houses. I doubt they do it that way. Unless they're going to do race-specific quests, like, the Elzins, like Elzins can do elf quests and stuff, which would be interesting, but I have a feeling that people might think that's pushing it a little too far with, some race-specific quests like that. Either way, I'm still more curious as to the third beast tribe they revealed. We've only seen one primal. So I'm curious, why we haven't seen or primals. Maybe there's only one primal as part of the story, and that other dungeon is replacing the other primal, or the primal is some other relation. We also found out that the light scent, as we've been calling them, are officially dubbed Sin Eaters, which makes sense considering they're light absorbing everything else. I'm pretty comfortable calling them light scent as opposed to void scent, but we've just got a couple of designs here. Really creepy gargoyle, which very much resembles the void scent version of a gargoyle, but has a woman's face and torso. And the thing on the right looks very similar to the some of the enemies we've seen in like the Void Ark and Eureka, and except that it looks like it's based in light, like it's like angelic, demonic, still looking at that face, but more angelic. So curious to learn more about these Sin Eaters. I'm especially looking forward to another Encyclopedia Eorzea about them. And they also named one of the main antagonists of the expansion Innocence, which I think the Sin Eater that we see that looks like Kurebu is kind of a placeholder to represent Innocence. But they said Yoshida wouldn't talk anymore about it. He just said you'll have to play to learn what Innocence actually is. Then they finally revealed the high-end raid. And this was, I don't think any of us could have predicted this. Some people are saying it was going to be like a Midgar-themed 8-man raid, and I never thought that. But I was like, I didn't feel comfortable guessing anything, and I'm glad I didn't. Because I would have never guessed Eden. And there's nothing to indicate it's like Final Fantasy VIII's Eden either. It just looks like a barren wasteland that has a single shrub, a single sapling that needs to grow. And I thought when I saw this initially it was going to be Yggdrasil, but I mean maybe it could, maybe eventually to restore the first to its original form. Maybe that is what we need. Maybe we need the life tree to I guess bring everything back in. But it's even more interesting that the light, which we've deemed as generally threatening to that zone, is the one thing that's shining down on this one little sapling. Moving forward a little bit, the focus of Eden will be to bring back all the elements other than the light. So this sounds very entwined with the main reason why we're actually going to the first, which is great. We don't know how much it has to do. There's an entire possibility that just bringing back the darkness is enough, but it's likely the main story will focus on us bringing back balance between light and dark, whereas Eden will focus on the other elements like fire and earth and wind and whatnot. Either way, I'm glad it doesn't seem like it's completely disconnected from why we're there in the story. It's something they really needed to nail, and I'm feeling really good. I have a very good feeling about Eden. Now, character design and boss design for this is going to be done by Tetsuya Nomura. Always had great character designs and boss designs, and the first one we see here, which you can very clearly tell is up his, in his, what's the wheelhouse? I guess you can tell it's a very Nomura-esque character. If you listen, you could change that hammer into a keyblade, and I would fully believe it. But it's also a hammer. And people are going to be upset to see another character with a hammer when we don't have hammers. He also left a message. He actually hand drew that concept art for Gaia, and this message basically just says how there wasn't enough time. He hand drew it, and please look forward to the character in the game later, Tetsuya Nomura. And then we got confirmation about Hrothgar. Now, for those who don't know, on the French client sometime back, there was a mistake where Vieira, basically Quests had added new race dialogue for the Vieira, but it also added them for a race we didn't know about called the Hrothgar. Now, this has led people to suspect that we would be getting female-only Vieira and male-only Hrothgar. Especially because the French client doesn't really have a great way of designating between genders, so there's nothing to 100% indicate based on that. I had been using that as fuel. As like, well, yeah, well, male Vieira, why would it be there? But I've spoken with some people, and they're very clear that it's not that male Vieira listed there, it's that translating it from one language to another leads it to look like it has that, because there's no gender specifications in the original text. And the Hrothgar is the next new race, and those, by the way, those of you who predicted female Vieira and male Hrothgar after that leak, you were correct. We are getting lion boys, pretty much. We're getting male-only Hrothgar and female-only Vieira. A few screenshots of them right here. You can see the very lion-esque faces and hair. Their build is very similar to that of a Rogadin, with some very different facial features. And there's a fun little tidbit about them, but I guess I'll wait a little bit to talk about that. And yeah, so you can see, there it is. Both have unique heads, both have unique customizable features, and both of them have 2 clans. We already knew that about the Vieira. The Hrothgar, we just had to assume was going to be the case. And I'm not super interested. I'm probably not going to race change. I just don't race change my main character. My other characters, I have spare Fantasias, maybe, but either way, offering some more race variety in Final Fantasy XIV. You got bunny people and lion boys. I know there's a lot of people who are disappointed at no male Vieira. I was 100%. I literally said in a video, I am 100% confident we are getting male Vieira. I still don't 100% agree with gender-locked races. Not that it couldn't be undone in the future, that they couldn't add male only, or they couldn't add male Vieiras and female Hrothgar. But it was a very weird choice. Yoshida was very clear when 2.0 came out that Rogadins and Mikotes, that he didn't like them being one gender, and that he wanted more customization options for those. And so for us to now be getting another set of one male, one female, was very, very surprising. I was confident he would never do that again. He described on stage of them saying basically if they did want to do 2 races, that this was probably their only option, because, to do male and female for 2 different races in the time that it takes for an expansion would be, not very feasible. I guess, like I said, it doesn't really matter to me, but I know some people definitely would have preferred maybe if they were going to do that to stick to one race and do both genders for it instead of something like this. Although I do remember some people wanting the male Vieira to be vastly different from the females, and I guess the Hrothgar still kind of meets that, just it's not a Vieira. This is the bottom line. It's not a bunny boy. Now, very interestingly, on the first shard, Vieiras are called V's and Hrothgars are called Ronsos, and so much so that they made Kimahri pretty much. I mean, he's not hornless, but it is a very short horn. So you can see a Fron-esque one on the right, and you can see it doesn't 100% look like Kimahri, but it's as close as you're going to get to it. It's very, very close to Kimahri on the left-hand side. So that's what you get. You're getting Ronsos, basically. Hrothgar is the alternative to Ronsos with a little bit more customization than your average Ronso would. So we're getting 2 new races in the expansion. After that was it. That was a wrap up for the opening keynote. They then brought on all the staff and whatnot to do opening words, and that was the end of it. So obviously, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of story speculation. We'll have a patch on Tuesday. Basically means there's going to be a lot of content popping up on the channel in regards to sometimes just strictly these announcements and sometimes some other stuff. So I really appreciate you all taking the time. It's been a fantastic first day at FanFest here in Tokyo, and I'm going to be doing a separate video about the goodie bag that I received, as well as my day 2 thoughts on FanFest overall, and individual videos about my thoughts on Hrothgar, Nomel Vieira, all sorts of stuff. Dancer, Final Fantasy 11 video on Dancer, as well as just a couple of other standalone videos. So a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline, and hopefully you guys are looking forward to it. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section of the video below, and please, for the love of God, just accept if somebody doesn't share your opinion. If you can't say something nice, just don't argue. Just try not to. I just don't. It's just not worth the energy, man. Trust me. So I'm going to wrap up this recording. I actually would like to go eat dinner and then come back and maybe record something else, as it is, what time is it? Like 7 o'clock right now. There's a good sushi place that is near me that just opened at 6:30. So I think I'll go there. Go get some sushi in Japan. So thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And I will be coming to you with all sorts of other videos this weekend and after I get back on Tuesday. So I will see all of you then. And until then, take care.